Hey, so I just woke up, but I thought this conversation was interesting, so I just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in while it's alive for me. What can approximate truth? I think, without being contrarian or facetious at all, honest to God, what do we mean by that? What do you mean by truth? How do you know that something is truth as opposed to non-truth? It's reliable, it's consistent, predictable. You apply it in a way that you expect a certain outcome and you get that outcome. Like being very careful to delineate what we really mean by that. Because I think a lot of times we're born with, or we grow up in a culture where it's kind of taken as a given, take it for granted. And sure, some people can be facetious to just try to win an argument and just retreat into some spaceless void and say, oh, like that was my first feelings when I listened to stuff like Alan Watts. But the more I sussed into it and heard statements like the Tao that's spoken is not the Tao, the more I was like, oh shit, there's like some profound, deep wisdom to this. Because if you've studied like epistemology and etymology, like I'm making noises with my esophagus right now, and you're inferring certain meaning based off of what those sounds mean in your brain. I'm going to do my best to try to articulate it in a way that imparts what I'm trying to communicate, some, felt understanding, and impart that. May not work. May land on deaf ears. Maybe you've heard this thing plenty of times and your operational model of existence just doesn't compute this. Doesn't mean you're dumb. In fact, maybe you're the smart one. Maybe I need to go through this more before I come back to something of a materialistic understanding. I'm fine to entertain that possibility. And so it's not terribly satisfactory, but I think when you really sit down and try to muscle through, what do we mean by truth here? Last thing I'll finish on for whatever it's worth, because I don't want to load anything more than a couple minutes, and I don't know how this will be received, but there's a great little thought exercise about what went wrong with human civilization. It uses the opening scene of 2001: A Space Odyssey, although it switches it up. If you're familiar with 2001: A Space Odyssey, it opens with this scene where you got a bunch of monkeys, they find this obelisk. They're all like, oh my God, and something of an analogy, I suppose, for the beginning of civilization. But let's say we switch out the obelisk for a ruler. And like 10, 20,000 years ago, when we were hunters and gatherers, or like we're cavemen or something, we find this ruler and we get all excited about it, just like those monkeys do about the obelisk. We start measuring everything and considering that the measurements are the truth. The metrics are the truth. They're certainly reliable enough, and we just start optimizing for the metrics in everything. That's kind of what's gone wrong, and we're way downstream in that impact. Is it evil? No, of course not. But it's certainly an addictive, extractive mindset of just like, whatever we can measure is real, and then we're going to optimize for that. That excludes literally everything else, because everything is connected to everything else. And so some of the deepest wisdoms, like Tao that spoken is not the Tao, and the interconnectedness of everything, have a certain amount of unsatisfactoriness to them a little bit, because they're not as definitive as we might like. But what is actually definitive? The more you try to define it, the more you end up being like a cancer cell that just isolate it and extract it and measure it and feel like, oh yes, I understand this. I have this pegged, planted my flag. Really? Okay. So anyway, I've just rambled a little bit. I just literally woke up and saw these messages on this message area and metamodern spirituality. And I'm in Peru right now, and anyway, it struck me to record something. I don't know if it's a value at all, so hopefully it is, and feel free to share responses accordingly. But I just find it an interesting exploration is all. So thanks, and I hope as well.